Okay, let's just start right at the top of the list and work our way down in no other order other than how they appear here. The DPW HVAC building, I spoke to Brian Joyce, sent an email on this. I guess curious if people have what they need in order to vote. Let's just work around the screens. Ralph?
Well, the argument is that they don't like their window air conditioners. Basically, that's it, right? They're getting two split air conditioners to substitute for window air conditioners, so you could replace the window air conditioners for about a tenth the price, and now we're going to splits. I don't know what to say. I think that's an extraordinary expense for a room that's not used, namely their break room, and a room that does use, which is their secretary's room. So this seems like an extraordinary expense for something that's used rarely, particularly where they spend most of their time down in the big maintenance area. They don't spend a lot of time in a break room there, as far as I know. Nobody's there. So I think this is an extraordinary expense. I'd cut it in half, to be honest with you. That's my personal view. So.
Okay. My understanding is there's some internal offices as well. Is that not true?
No, they got a break room, they've got a secretary's room, and maybe they got one other office. There's not much up there. Almost all.
I've only been in Carl's office. I don't think Carl's office faces the outside.
Right.
It faces the bays, and that's the only one I've ever been in. So it's that certainly does not have AC in it. Anyway, I feel like I have what I need to vote.
Okay. All right.
Susan, do you have what you need, or do you have further questions on this?
No, I don't have further questions, and I have what I need to vote.
Okay, Michael?
I'm not 100% sure, but I don't want to hold up the works.
Okay.
I mean, we have two different versions, one from Ralph and one from Brian.
Yes. Francine?
I have what I need to vote. Can you just tell me what do you mean two different versions? I have it of the Excel file that we were working off last week. Is that what you're suggesting, Mike?
What I'm going by, Francine, is what Brian presented to us, and then Ralph's statement just now that they don't need it. So that's
okay.
Irreconciled.
It's fair. It's fair. Does anyone have any view on how we would reconcile the two different versions that we're getting?
I think the secretary deserves, having a comfortable environment. There's no question in my mind. It's the rest of it that makes no sense to me, right?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I understand your position, Ralph. I'm trying to figure out,
The way to do it would be to have Ralph talk with Brian directly and have them come to some kind of agreement. To do it right.
Okay.
Otherwise,
otherwise you're gonna.
Darts.
Okay. Ralph, is that something you'd like to do?
I'll be glad to, sure.
Okay.
And if Ralph is satisfied, great. And if Brian gets the message, great.
Right. And if we can't resolve it, we're just going to need to vote it. I mean, I understand we have different views on this, right? One coming from the request and one coming from a member of the committee. So,
right now, Brian, you were supposed to check with Brian Joyce on this, but were you able to?
I did, yes, and I shared what I learned in an email. I can sort of re-summarize it for the broader group. But my question was specifically, are there internal rooms that don't have windows and therefore you can't just hang a unit in them? And the answer is yes. My question,
actually, the question is can this be deferred? That's what I noted from last week.
I also asked him, can it be deferred? And he said, yeah, it can be deferred. There are going to be, by definition, they have they have HVAC,
Okay.
HVAC
So
up.
if Brian Joyce says it can be deferred, I have what I need to vote.
Okay, just to be completely clear, he's not suggesting it should be deferred, and he's not suggesting the team is going to be happy up there if it is deferred.
Fine, but the question is can this be deferred?
Yeah.
And that's a question of the department head. And the department head said yes, so I can go with that.
Yeah, honestly, I think you should have that conversation with him directly, Michael. It was yes, but.
Well, then we're making it really complicated.
Yeah, it is really complicated. I mean, of course
Well,
you
how
can
about if
defer
you
it. I
and
mean,
I
you can
have a
defer.
conversation with Brian then? I mean, you know,
Say it again, Mike. What's that?
how about if you and I have a conversation with Brian Joyce? I'm
Yeah,
available.
I'd say, let me talk with, I do it with Carl. Okay, Brian never is there. He lives in a nice place in the town hall. Ask Carl directly. I'm glad to do that with you.
Very
with
good.
you.
And then
Okay,
call me, let me know what you think.
okay. Well, no, I think I'll make a joint call if I can do it. Okay,
That'll be terrific.
okay. great.
Okay,
Thank you.
and so Ralph, to the extent that you didn't see the email sent earlier today, okay, the two things that Brian referenced on this is that, you know, we need to be cognizant of OSHA. And we need to be cognizant that that team is unionized as of 3 years ago.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with all that, and I did see it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I'll leave it at that. Have the conversation, and if you can report back, that would be great. Okay, the next one that was an open item was the police locker replacement. I was going to defer to, in the event that Ralph felt we needed a walkthrough. He and I discussed it. There is no feeling that we need a walkthrough on that. The walkthrough request was really specific to the broader, you know, first responder facility review request that has been withdrawn. So this is not necessary. And I guess with that question answered, I would ask the group whether or not they have what they need to vote. Susan, do you have what you need to vote?
I have to say, Brian, I didn't fully follow what you were saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't follow it either.
Okay, so the next item where we had an open question is the police locker replacement.
Whoa, what happened to the garage door replacement?
That's ready to vote.
Okay, so do you want to do that?
I wanted to go through all the open items so that everybody knows where we are before we
I
vote.
see. So you skipped over 5 and going to 6.
Correct. I skipped over the fire. I skipped to the next open item.
Okay. And so what you're saying is that the locker replacement is being withdrawn?
No, I'm saying that Ralph does not need a walkthrough. If you read what the note here, it says ready to vote, but Brian will check with Ralph regarding walkthrough. The need for a walkthrough. Okay, Ralph and I discussed that. There is no need for a walkthrough. That leaves us ready to vote unless someone has
Okay.
thought their position as of last week.
Gotcha. Okay.
Has anyone rethought their position as of last week? Or do you all feel like you're still ready to vote?
I'm still ready to vote.
Ready to vote, right.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. The library roof, we're ready to vote on that. CPC is hearing that request tonight. So I discussed that with Russ Benetti. He had both appetite and feels he has charter flexibility to do it. And I spoke with Chris as well. So that request is in front of CPC tonight. Hopefully they approve that and that will come off of our list. Okay.
I'm getting word by text right now that I don't know that that's coming off your list.
Really?
I don't know how well it's going at CPC tonight.
Okay.
So I'll know more in a few minutes when they're done.
Okay. That's unfortunate. Just want,
I
just
think
want that we have this-
there's a little pushback as to whether or not the building is actually classified as historical or not.
okay.
Let me find out for you.
Well, that's a
That's
little
right.
bit surprising considering CPC has funded things on that building in the past.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pull. Ralph.
Nice to have a resource under your
I
own roof.
know.
Yeah, no, Ralph is talking to Jackie, so we're
Yeah.
going to get the definitive answer on this right now. And she's probably going to pipe into the CPC meeting and set everybody straight. Which could
That's
work.
how it works.
Just a quick one if you're interested. I asked Jackie if the library is technically a historic building like the Paul Pratt. The answer is not technically that, but that is no reason not to fund it, okay? So,
Okay. So that's the library roof and the saga continues. Okay, the next item that had an outstanding item is the 4-wheel drive loader to replace the 3-yard Samsung SL150 year 2000. It's actually in 1998. So I checked my emails just immediately before this meeting, and I have not heard back yet on the proposal that I put in front of Brian Joyce. But to make a long story short, the transmission failed on this unit. We have found a highly credible transmission remanufacturing facility in New England who is prepared to do an all-in, removal, rebuild and reinstallation of the transmission on that for 25 grand. I've given Brian Joyce the contact numbers at that organization to make sure that he and Carl and their team are comfortable with it. And I was hoping to hear back, but I have not heard back prior to this meeting. But it looks like, having discussed that with both Chris and Brian Joyce earlier today, both of them seem very favorably disposed to that as an alternative, given that, prior to the transmission fail, everybody thought we had, at least another 5, if not 10 or 15 years left of life left in that piece of equipment. Michelle, I don't know if you've heard anything further, but I didn't get an email from Brian prior to this meeting. So
Further, I heard they were looking into it.
okay, so that's where we are in the loader. Okay, the annual road paving, also sent everybody an email on this. Basically where we are right now is we've right around $900,000 worth of road paving funds available because our road paving program came to a halt 2 years ago, and we haven't really done much since, or anything for that matter. So these funds have continued to build up, both the Chapter 90 reimbursement funds that we would have to, you have to apply to get them back, but they're available to us. And as well as the funds that capital budget has actually, appropriated in past town meetings. So I think we've got 475,000 of capital budget, and I think there's 450,000, roughly speaking, of Chapter 90 funds. So there's quite a bit of money there. This is one of the levers that we can pull if we have to, having discussed it with Brian and Chris. If there's an item where we need to cut back on funding to make some room for some other things, this would be the year to do it. The flip side of that is, we're not even replacing what we should be under that program. So is it really the right short time? Is it really the right solution short term to underfund it this year, just given we're in catch up mode? And that's the update. I don't know if people have any thoughts, but.
So what you're saying is Chris Senior said this could be withdrawn.
I don't think anyone, it could be. I either hear Brian suggest it should be withdrawn in its entirety, but if we wanted to fund less than 300,000 because we really felt compelled to fund something else and we couldn't make it all fit in the budget, there's some flexibility on that.
Okay, so the
150,
the downside
whatever.
is having to promise ourselves that when they need the money, they're going to get it, that they will be at the top of the list, and it's guaranteed because we did not vote on it this year in order to make something fit. So does that defer a decision for another year that might hamstring us?
Good.
In which case I would say, just keep putting that money in the bank so that Brian Joyce has all the funds he needs to do the road work, because maintenance is high on our list of priorities. Not letting it backslide.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
So if they're building up this little reserve, what is the likelihood that they're able to catch up on all the work that needs to be done that hasn't been done versus just picking up where they left off, because of delays and capacity issues with people, so that we're really no worse off if we don't give them the money because there's no way, practically speaking, they can catch up?
So just to be clear, it was never their intent to build up the reserve, right? I mean, we appropriated in the Chapter 90, funds come through. Chapter 90 availability comes through to us. We have not been able to execute the past 2 years, and that's not, it's not unique to Cohasset. So, it wasn't their intent to build up this fund.
I understand it wasn't intentional,
Yeah.
but I think that's what's happening.
Yes, sure.
Now,
And-
Mike Barclay has a raised hand.
Mike?
Hi, I just wanted to, I guess, alert you. When we talked to the schools a couple weeks back, and they had as part of their capital request, the paving, we suggested or wondered out loud if they could maybe loop back with you and try to see if they could make their paving needs part of the broader town's efforts to do so. I didn't know if it, would potentially, create some efficiencies or not. I don't know if that ever came back to you all, but Mary and Jean and I did suggest that to the schools when we talked to them, not to complicate the issue of paving, but I know the school capital ask was pretty high, and we were looking for ways to try to, maybe knock it down a bit.
So Mike, that's helpful color, and it's a helpful suggestion. There has not been a follow-up conversation with the school on this, which is one of the many things that I've been chasing down, but did not succeed on that one. And that's my fault more so than the schools, just to be completely clear. Certainly, there should be coordination. I mean, ultimately, the school is going to call Brian Joyce to execute on that road and on that sidewalk.
Right.
When the time comes.
Yeah. So anyway, so just saying that was suggested to them, and they at least seemed open to it when we made the suggestion.
Okay. I mean, it raises an interesting question, right? Which is, do you have the flexibility to fund that, out of our road and Chapter 90 funds if we ever desired to? And I would think the answer is probably yes. And that's probably just one more reason to stick with the, with the funding plans. But I'm just thinking out loud.
I think the argument of staying with the funding plans is that you can do about a mile of road with 300,000, something in that order, maybe 300,000 or 400,000. And we've got what, 47,000 miles, or 47 miles of roads. You're still talking about, 47 years or some incredible amount of time, if only we appropriate $300,000 per year. So
Right.
We're not even close to actually, a 20-year replacement
Right.
capability. We ought to be at 600,000, to be honest with you, to do the job, and that's without inflation. So it doesn't make sense to shortchange it. We really desperately need to pave our roads. They really do.
That's not my concern, Ralph. My concern is building up a kitty if they can't get out there. I mean, the money's no good if they can't get the people out there to do the work. And that's my concern, that they're just because we give them the money, they're not going to be able to double the size of the work crew to catch up.
I understand. I think that what's happened, honestly, Francine, on this one is that the road projects are held up by both the water and the sewer department mostly. That is, I think what's happened is that, for example, when Elm Street was done, you obviously intended to pave it, but you couldn't pave it because they were doing the water department work there. So what's really happening is it's almost out of their control, but it's not people. It's really projects, which are, for example, the gas company. They continue to do Beechwood Street, as you know. So everywhere we're looking, we're seeing the roads cut up by for other reasons, and therefore we can't repave until all that work gets done. That's where the problem is.
I see. Okay.
So
That's
it appears
helpful.
to be, yeah.
That's helpful.
Susan, thoughts?
I'm in agreement that we should continue to fund the roads. Only because Ralph's point is a good point. We're behind where we need to be monetarily. And it'd be great to get that fund up to a level where we're more comfortable. We did talk a little bit, Brian, last week about whether the Chapter 90 money could be used for other reasons than paving roads. Did that get clarified?
We touched on it briefly, and the answer is yes, it can. And I don't know if Michelle, you want to expand on that at all.
So the Chapter 90 funding can be used for equipment. It can be used for buildings related to the DPW, such as your salt shed. There's a whole list of items it can be used for, and it's not just road maintenance. So I think the only thing well, no, I think it can even be used towards engineering as well. So there's several different categories in which it can be used. So if in fact you couldn't get ahead of the roads and you could use the fund for their other projects.
Did you get a sense if there's any appetite for that?
I think we had spoken about it last year when we were going for the funding for the salt shed. We were asking the question is why not pull the money from Chapter 90 to fund the salt shed? And at that time, they wanted to do more paving. I think the Elm Street project was kind of coming on board. So they thought they'd be paving that. And I think Ralph's point is well taken that there's a lot of projects out there that have been stalled, if you will, that are stalling the pavement plan. So
Mhm. Okay.
And
I know the townspeople are pretty upset about Sawyer Street. There's always a lot of chatter about the condition of Sawyer Street.
Victoria Street is the gas company, if I'm,
Yeah. there was
They are. We've got National Grid money to do Sawyer Street. So, you know, hopefully we can get the resources in place to do some execution this year. I don't know if there are any other further comments. I hadn't really expressed a view on this, but I you know, and I wanted to go last because I didn't want to lead anyone, but I'm in complete agreement that, you know, if we can make this budget work and while simultaneously protecting the full $300,000 funding appropriation of the roads, I think that's the right way to go. I think you start playing with that number and people get comfortable that they can overspend in other areas or spend more in other areas and squeeze the roads. And I don't think that's a sustainable strategy. So I don't think it's a good short-term message. So that's roads. It sounds like we're ready to vote on that. Ralph, do you have what you need on that?
I do, yeah, right.
Susan?
Yes.
Francine? Francine, do you have what you need to vote? Are you ready to vote on road?
Yes, sorry, I'm on mute, yes.
Okay, Michael?
I am, yes.
Okay, I am as well. So that's that item. Okay, the next item is the police cars. I had, and specifically, there's a question, you know, as to whether or not we could reduce the outlay. I had reached out to Chief Quigley for further information on that, forwarded it to everybody in the group. Michael, I think you had further questions and possibly a further conversation. Were you able to get any of that resolved, or is that still an open item?
The chief is on vacation. I called in today.
Okay.
I sent him an email and I don't have an answer. Just for everyone's benefit, I question the amount of money we're putting into these cars for lights. It seems that there are far more lights on patrol cars than before. And I'm just wondering if they're all really necessary to keep the officers safe and the public safe, and if we can save some money. So that's the simple question I put to the chief, and I'm waiting to hear back.
Okay. Did he give you any guidance on when he's back from vacation? Is he out the full week? I mean, is this?
I believe he's back on Thursday. Let me double check my email.
Just curious if there's an opportunity to actually get this resolved prior to next Monday.
One thing, for whatever it's worth, I did go back on this issue. I did go back and look at, I think last year what we voted, because I know you've said this is this is a whole program of replacing these cars.
Yes.
And the price was comparable to last year, and I think the year before in terms of what they're asking for it. If it's gone up by just a few $1,000s, probably inflation type of increase, not something that is so egregious. But my point is, it's similar to what they've asked for in terms of price over the last few years that we've
Over the last few years. Yeah.
that we've approved.
There were two step functions that happened several years ago, probably before the time frame that you looked at, Francine. One is that, they used to ask for the cars and the radios separately.
Okay.
But they always ask for a radio with the car. And finally we said, why don't you just put them together as a single request? So that made the headline number go up. The second is that we moved to hybrids, and that also increased the cost of the car. I think they used to be 27 and now they're, I don't know, 33, Michael. I don't remember. But anyway, it was like a $5,000 step up. So part of it is that, but Michael has a very valid point. There's a long list of add-ons on these cars. I've done this exercise, but that doesn't mean, it's right for me to try and convince anyone else. I think it's a healthy conversation to have.
I do have an email response from Chief Quigley. What he says is that these are complete upfits, so the cost is increased. We can start deleting a light here and a light there, but the savings will be minimal. Not keeping the equipment in cars consistent also presents an operational challenge. We strive to keep the equipment the exact same across the fleet. So it sounds to me like we are going to be basically boxed into getting full boat add-ons from now to the future because of the statement, well, we want to keep all the cars consistent, across the fleet. There doesn't seem to be an appetite to try and save some money and manage through it. So, but there's our answer.
Right. I guess what I would say is, there's not an appetite, Michael, but if you feel there's not an appetite on their part, let's put it that way, to repeat an exercise that was done when we put the program in place. But that doesn't mean that, there shouldn't be the patience to have the conversation if you want to have the conversation. So I think you should.
Okay, I will.
I think the agreement was that in our meeting with Chief Quigley was that he would do that waterfall chart one more time, the one that we talked about many years ago. And the purpose
About
of
how they're rotating the cars.
how do you rotate them? In fact, I guess there are several questions to be raised now that they're going to hybrids, which are worth asking. One is, aren't hybrids of longer life than, in fact, the current cars? So that, in fact, instead of at 100,000 miles, which is the warranty, we dispose of them. Or, in fact, at 30,000, we take them off of front line and move them over down the waterfall chart. There are a series of questions which deserve to be answered, but I'm afraid it's awfully late in the cycle to try to ask those questions. But we did ask them in the beginning. So it seems to me both the waterfall chart and the actual life of these things ought to be figured out more completely based on the longer duration potential for these vehicles.
So
And I also see that the chief is out until March 24th, which is Thursday.
Okay.
that's this Thursday. Okay, so just two thoughts. We should absolutely chase the waterfall just to see how he's rotating the cars. And if there's anyone on the call that doesn't understand what that means, it just simply means that if you keep a car, if you start a car as a patrol cruiser and you keep it as a patrol cruiser, you will burn the 100,000 mile warranty in about 2.5 years. So it's very important when you get up to around 70,000 miles to pull it off of patrol duty and put it into, either the unmarked category or the detective squad or a school resource officer or some other role where, you're only putting whatever 10, 12,000 miles on the vehicle a year so that you hit that 100,000 mile mark right at year 5. That's how you max out the warranty and minimize the operating expense. So that's what Ralph means with regards to the waterfall. I know that chart predates some of you on the committee. With regards to the, longevity, Ralph, so in theory, these cars should last longer. They should last longer. To some degree, it may actually be early in our experience with these cars to know what we're actually going to be able to do with them. We've only had hybrids. I think the chief got his hybrid in an appropriation 2 years ago, and I don't think they were able to take delivery of it until not that long ago. And I think they got their first squad cars in the appropriation last year. And I think they very recently actually sort of hit the fleet and hit the road. So they're really happy with them, but it's really early days in terms of our understanding of whether or not these are actually going to deliver more longevity. It is clear already that they're saving gas. But that was only sort of one of the benefits.
So what you're saying is we rotate these cars off of frontline duty where they no longer need those add-ons that I've been complaining about. And we've got all of those add-ons on cars that don't need them. Is that right? Do I have
So
that right?
if they go unmarked, the only thing that comes off is the wrap, because the lights are all internal on these vehicles now. Or at least they should be. So that really is the only thing that distinguishes an unmarked or
Well, I don't understand what you're saying then about taking them off the front line. So rather than waste more time on this,
Yep.
I suggest that we have Chief Quigley come and speak with us and allow him to answer a lot of these questions.
If that's what the committee would like, then let's just do that for next week.
Or am I overdoing this?
I would defer to the other members of the committee. Ralph, what do you think?
I think irrespective of what happens, we're going to spend that money. That's how I see it. I may have some real serious reservations about whether or not we might do something, but I think there's no escaping the fact that they're going to buy 2 cars and they're going to outfit them with $17,000 worth of new equipment, primarily, I believe, because the current package, not just the lighting, but this very extensive piece of equipment they put in the trunk, which includes all of the gear associated with their communication systems, is going to be replaced irrespective of what we say. So we might get your 17,000 down to 16 or 15, but we're not going to get it much lower as I see it. I think most of it's going to stay. So my own view is we're going to have to spend time on the waterfall chart and try to figure out whether we can actually get additional life and more usage out of these vehicles. But I don't think we're going to change our opinion no matter what I do or say. So I think we're going to pay for it. That's just my view. So.
Susan, what are your thoughts?
I did have a question on the next line item that's on the list. Just refresh my memory. Is that in the car or is that back at the station?
Back at the station.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Francine, went back and found that these prices are similar to what we paid in years past. So it's pretty hard to argue on the price because it's more about the program, and our program has been to replace 2 cars a year and do the waterfall. So it's just a question of whether we want to continue with the program. And my feeling is it seems as though we should until we have enough data points on the hybrid and understand that they may actually last longer, and we have to modify the way that we do the waterfall.
Francine?
I think the going through the waterfall exercise that you and Ralph have described is definitely worthwhile, but at the end of the day, I agree with Ralph. I don't know that anything they may be flexible enough to take off these cars is going to move the needle enough at this point that it's going to be a material change from what they're asking for. And, and like I said, I did go back and look, and it's, whether it was right or wrong, it's what we've agreed to in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm in the same place. I mean, I actually did this exercise, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 years ago, and had the exact same instincts that Mike Dick has today, which is, wow, that's a lot of stuff and it's a long list. And, I went through this line by line with Chief Quigley, and it got to the point where, he was saying, well, maybe we could save, $700 here by having, a local party weld some brackets on, as opposed to, the aftermarket specialist that upfits police cars. And when we hit that point in the conversation, I realized that I personally was creating a headache for him you know, at the expense of, well, for the benefit of trying to save an amount of money that probably didn't justify the headache that I was creating for him. And that's when I personally stopped. So, but Michael, I completely understand where you're coming from on this. And I guess what I would say is if it, you know, would give you any comfort to go through that list with him, you should. But I hesitate to make a committee meeting out of it. Even if we were successful, I think we might peel $1,000 out of a car, and it's just relative to the other things we're trying to resolve here. I just don't know if that's a great use of committee time, or for that matter, if even the committee is the right place to, you know, to press Chief Quigley to that degree of detail on, you know, on the list of ads. So my instinct, if you're willing and okay with it, is to have that conversation with him. You should have that conversation with him. But I'd just suggest that, you know, that you do that privately, and we'll seek the waterfall from him as a committee.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing you say, I don't see any way forward. If I meet with him one-on-one, it's just a dead end. So I'm ready to vote, and I'll vote against. That's basically the best way forward here.
Okay. I mean, I guess the question is, you know, is it worth your time to actually go through this with him on the off chance that you actually, you know?
I'm not going to convince him. If there's going to be any
Right. Well, I'm just questioning
persuasion, it's if he feels that the committee agrees.
Yeah.
And if the committee doesn't agree, well, you know.
I guess I'm asking you a slightly different question. Do you think there's any possibility that he would convince you? Because if there's any possibility of that happening, I think you should have the conversation with him.
Well, never say never, but I just don't think it's a good use of my time or his.
Okay. Okay, I understand. Okay, but it sounds like everybody wants the waterfall. Sure. Do people want Chief Quigley to present the waterfall to us, or do we just want the waterfall as soon as possible? And if it's self-explanatory, so be it. What are people's thoughts on that?
I'm fine just seeing it.
Okay.
I'm familiar
And
I mean,
he should publish it. I think the number one thing is he agreed to publish it. He should publish it. That's how I see it. Right.
Okay, so I'm going to put a
Agree.
star next to this. We need the waterfall from him, but otherwise we're ready to vote. Is what I'm hearing. Okay, and I have to confess on the mobile. Moving on to the next line item. Are we done on the police cars? So we want. Okay, so moving on to the next line item. I don't know if this was just a dupe or if we actually wanted to go back and ask them the question on this. I did not ask them the question as to whether or not we could reduce the cost of his mobile base stations. And I just don't know if anyone had a view on that. I can certainly ask him that question when I go back to the waterfall. Does anyone have a view on this? Or are we fundamentally ready to vote on the mobile base stations?
You know, honestly, I'm looking through all of this stuff he presented, and I just am not clear on what they were. I'm sure I must have missed something in the conversation on this thing. I'm looking through all the stuff that he sent to us, and I'm not sure exactly what he's buying, but or why. But anyway, I just don't know.
And this is really where I keep coming up, and that is, I don't feel that the chief is trying to keep his costs down. That there's no real dialogue with this group. That he's basically saying, here's what it is. It's public safety. You got to fund it. That's how I'm reading this. And if it's not clear to you, Ralph, why these two mobile base stations cost what they do, and if these two mobile base stations can be brought down in cost just because we're trying to get all departments to keep costs as close to minimal as possible. So it's more than just debating the number of lights on police cars. And it's more than just getting an explanation that doesn't explain anything on mobile base stations. It's having the willingness to answer honestly and in lay terms, the question, are we overspending? Can we reduce our costs? That's the question. That's really the fundamental questions. These two are just symptomatic.
Okay, I will go back and ask for further information on the mobile base stations. Just as a perspective, and I'll put it out there, I think it would be easy to interpret the conversation around the police cars as not having any motivation to engage in a discussion on that. And I think that perception can exist because we specifically did the work, in excruciating detail to put in place a program so that we wouldn't have to debate this every year. Doesn't mean we can't revisit at any given point in time, but that's why the police requests come through, look the same, and don't get a lot of discussion at Capitol each year. I think there's just a fundamental understanding as to what that is, why it is, and yeah, it goes through without a debate. So I completely understand your perspective, but I do want you to understand that there was, an intense scrutiny that occurred to put that program in place so that, so there wouldn't be an annual discussion about it. But all that said, it sounds like we need a lot more information on the mobile base stations. So let's do that, and we'll get the waterfall.
Hey, Brian, can I ask a quick question on that?
Please, please.
I don't have your spreadsheet, but is that the 13,960 for the base station?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's in your.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just for what it's worth, and I'm not sure if when I put these notes in, I guess at one point the chief said that the current base station is 5 years past end of life, and they have to go to eBay to get spare parts. So just confirm that is indeed the case. Anyway, that's just for what it's worth. That's what I have as notes next to that particular item.
That's helpful, Mike. And you have 13,960 as your number, is that correct?
Yes, that's when he originally presented to you back, I don't know, in late January or something. Where are my notes here? Yeah, but yeah, I think it was from the evening that he and the police, the fire rather, requested their capital from you.
Okay.
So Brian,
So-
it says it's for 2 base stations on the.
Susan, we can't hear you.
My volume all the way up. It says it's for 2 base stations on the spreadsheet. But then in the section where they describe it, they say that it's a control station to serve as an emergency station in the operations center. So is it really 2, or why would we need 2? Make it work.
So I think what you did, if I heard you correctly, it's one for the police station, one for the emergency, like Glenn Pratt's operation, the emergency operations center. Is that what you?
No, that's not what it says on the requisition. It says it's to serve as an emergency base station in the operations center when infrastructure is offline.
Okay.
So I'm just curious if it's really 1 or 2 stations, that's all.
Okay. So when
The minutes, yeah. The minutes we have from that, I have that the base station radio hasn't been replaced in 20 years, challenges with existing equipment due to its age, and everything has moved to digital. It's the cost of the base station will include external speakers, radio antenna, and installation. They've looked at grants, but they can't get a grant on the radio.
Okay, so your notes suggest 1 unit, not 2.
That's right.
Okay.
with those other things, the speakers, antenna, and installation.
Okay. Okay. All right, so it sounds like we've asked most of these questions, but we need to go back and just clarify this to make sure that we have 100% certainty. Just based on the various notes and minutes. Okay, the next two items, so is there anything further on the police requests before we move on? Okay. The next two items are the security upgrades and the WAN upgrades. I'm going to touch on the two of them together because there are some updates that sort of canvas both. The first is that there is a $100,000 E-rate rebut. It's not a rebate. It's effectively a state refund of monies that we spend on certain types of infrastructure equipment to the extent that they support education. And obviously our network was built almost entirely at the behest of the schools. So the majority of this equipment does fall into that bucket, even today. And so, there's $100,000 out there. I've had conversations with Chris and Don and Ron, highlighting the fact that, if that whoever fronts the upfront cost for the equipment, should receive the rebate so that that party is only funding the net amount. That's how it's done with all of their grant programs. Somehow, this one wasn't set up that way. But in the end, they've all agreed that that is the right way to set it up. They can and will set it up that way. And so there is there's $100,000 offset here. We would have to appropriate the full amount, spend the full amount. And then, this is not competitive. You simply have to do the paperwork on a timely basis to file for the refund, and $100,000 would come back to the capital budget stabilization fund, most likely in the fall prior to special town meeting. So it'd be, fairly quick fronting exercise. So, there's, whether you want to look at that as a $100,000 reduction or request, which is probably not the right way to look at it, or whether you want to look at it as $100,000 that comes back and might allow us to overspend our target by 100, recognizing that 100 will round trip and land back in the fund. That's either way, it's 100,000 of extra flexibility. So that piece of this is resolved. The other piece that is not resolved, and Ron Menard is speaking to the vendor about this, is the service contracts and some of the software licenses. The quotes that you have in front of you here include 3-year bundles of maintenance services and 3-year bundles of software licenses. The maintenance services, I'd be very curious as to how other people feel about this. But we generally don't see maintenance requests as a capital, as a capital budget committee. We don't see maintenance requests for our cars. We don't see maintenance requests, literally like annual repetitive maintenance costs. I mean, we see special, major one-time renovations or restorations, but we don't see sort of an annual repetitive, maintenance cost on smaller pieces of equipment, which is what we have here. So my instinct was that those aren't capital. The software licenses, I have a bit of a mixed view. That really is kind of an asset. You really do have to pay for it, year after year after year. So I'm still thinking through that one. But the bottom line is Ron Menard is getting pricing from the vendors on what those, what those packages would look like on an annual basis as opposed to front loading 3 years. And then we can have once we have those numbers, we can have the discussion as to whether or not it's a good investment to buy 3-year chunks if the discounts are sufficient enough to motivate us to do that. And we can also have the discussion as to whether or not the maintenance piece should actually sit in the annual operating budget, recognizing that his operating budget would need to be funded appropriately to cover those expenses. And I've made that last point very clear, Chris Senior. I mean, it's not a game of hot potato. Wherever those costs sit, they have to be funded. So I'll stop there and just see if people have questions, comments, thoughts.
I'm confused on what you're saying. We have a $360,000 request for wide area network upgrades.
Yes,
Is that what we're talking about here?
it's that and the $200,000 of security upgrades.
Right. Those are both upgrades. I don't see them as maintenance.
Yeah.
I see them as capital investment in our IT infrastructure, both supporting our ability to keep our networks up because it provides redundancy and resiliency. And it provides additional protection for intrusion, malware, ransomware. So overall, I see this as a valid capital request for very good reasons.
Okay, so let me clarify. If you look at the detailed proposals in each of those categories, particularly the WAN upgrades, which provide more detail, security ones do not. Okay. What you'll see is a very long list of items, most of which are hardware. Okay. So when you're thinking about, pulling boxes out of the network and replacing them with newer, faster, higher performance ones, yeah, that's the part you're thinking of. That's absolutely correct. That's capital. There isn't any.
I'm thinking of redesign, and I think that's what he's doing here. It's not replacing, not entirely replacing old boxes with new ones. He's also setting up a new architecture.
That's correct. Okay. In addition to purchasing what I'll call boxes with flashing lights, all right, you will also see in those price estimates, 3-year maintenance service contracts on those boxes with flashing lights. Okay. Those 3-year maintenance services contracts do fundamentally two things. Number one, they give you the upgrades to the extent that there's a bug in the software. Okay. But more importantly, they give you, 24-hour tech hotline support. They give you fast replacement to the extent your box goes down and they need to FedEx something out to you. It's fundamentally outsourced tech and spare services to provide maintenance for the boxes with flashing lights that you actually purchased. Okay. That piece of these proposals is annual maintenance. It doesn't further upgrade the network. It doesn't further redesign the network. It's simply a form of operating cost. Now, some people do that internally, right? Some people outsource it. Ron runs a very light headcount operation. His choice is to, buy the full maintenance services, on an outsourced basis, pay the higher price and run the leaner headcount. And that's probably the right answer. But that piece of this request does not become capital just because it is associated with, a piece of hardware. It is what it is. It's outsourced maintenance service. It's not the majority of this. It's a small component of it, but just because we bundle it in and buy it for 3 years doesn't transform it from an outsourced an outsourced operating expense to become a capital expense. Does that clarify anything, Michael?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. So I'm
Okay.
trying to understand your position. Is it your position that we should take out what you call a small part of the request? Is that what you're saying?
That's
'Cause it sounded
precisely
like-
right. That's precisely right. My position would be that, maintenance services need to be, that's an operating expense and it needs to be budgeted accordingly, because at the end of year 3, even if we bought a 3-year upfront and called it capital, okay, at the end of year 3, he's going to need to go fund that some other way because it's
Okay, it sounded like you were against the whole package.
no, I'm not.
Okay, so
I'm
are you
definitively
suggesting
not.
that we underfund his request to the tune of what those service contracts are?
I'm suggesting, well, I'll tell you what my instinct is, and I don't want to necessarily lead the rest of the committee. I want to highlight the issue, and then we can talk about the different ways of approaching it. But my personal position on this is operating expense should be built into the operating budget, and the operating budget should be funded appropriately to cover the operating expense. So look, intermediate term, yes, my view is that the maintenance expense item that's bundled into these two numbers should be stripped back out and should land in the operating budget. Now, the practical reality for this year is that it's way too late for them to change the operating budgets. There's also going to be an overlap in terms of these maintenance contracts where, we're frankly paying maintenance on the new boxes, and we've already paid maintenance on the old boxes that he's ripping out of the network. And so we should, I guess, as a purely personal comment, to make that transition, I'm philosophically comfortable with bundling maybe 1 year of maintenance services with the purchase of the new hardware and equipment, just to make sure that we facilitate his transition from the old to the new. But I think that once these things are in the network, it really should roll into the operating budget and be funded accordingly. So starting with year 2, I'm not instinctively of the view that I would personally want to, bundle 3 years of maintenance services, call it capital, and fund it as capital. Because even if we did in year 4, he's got to fund it. I mean, we should just get to the reality of it as soon as possible. But that's, you're asking me specifically what I would suggest. That's what I would suggest.
So you're saying underfund his request to the tune of the service contracts?
I mean, I guess that would be one way of saying it. The other way I was saying it would be modify the request to include 1 year of service and plan to cover the following years of service in your operating budget.
Okay, so that means going back to Ron and getting his buy-in on that.
That's correct.
Okay, otherwise we could vote and we could consider a motion from you to underfund it, but you're not going that way.
I don't think that's the right way to handle it.
Okay, all right.
I very specifically had this conversation, with Chris and with Ron over the course of last week. Ron is out to the vendor looking to gather information on what these items would cost on a 1 year basis as opposed to a 3 year basis. And in the case of the security upgrades, I mean, it wasn't even broken out at all. It was literally just a single price, boxes, software licenses, maintenance contract, all bundled into a 3 year deal. You can't even tell what you're paying for. So he's going to come back. I mean, he can maybe, but I can't. So he's going to come back with details on, what the 1 year costs would be, which will actually be helpful because at some point he's going to have to build those into his operating budget, whether it's now or 4 years from now. So he should know.
All right, so for the purposes of our meeting tonight, really we can just move on to say we're not ready to vote and that we've got more information to come.
That's correct. I'm sharing with everybody everything that I have at this moment of time. So
Okay,
that's really the point of the comment.
okay,
And I would not be inclined to vote on this tonight. I'd prefer not to vote on this tonight.
okay.
So questions, further information, Susan?
No, I followed exactly what you're saying. I think that does make sense.
Okay, Francine, thoughts?
I agree. I think we need to have Ron go back and look at the service contracts. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, Ralph?
Yeah, I first I want to say that I'm very supportive of what Ron has done. I think that
Great.
moving to a point where we're going to get significantly more security, I think, in our system, and we're going to the cloud. I support all of that. I think a lot of it's necessary. There are a few things that probably are a little bit unnecessary, like dividing out all of this fiber and using them as bi-directional fibers, things like that. That seems like probably not necessary, but I wouldn't debate it. I'm
Great.
looking at the annual support costs at $30,000 right now. I'm looking at it, what he submitted to us. I do, and it says 3 years. So I'm of the view, the same as most everybody, I guess, is that I would fund certainly all the hardware, there's no question in my mind, that's the right thing to do at this stage. I do think getting $30,000 worth of maintenance, when in fact that really is a budgeted item in their operating expense, really has to be reconsidered. And I would certainly support doing the 1 year, because there's no possible way you're going to break this out and put it into his operating budget now. So my own view is I would support all of the things going on. I would certainly push very hard to do a 1 year support. Even if he wants to sign a 3-year contract, he's going to have to pick up that $20,000 in his operating budget later on. That's how I look at it. So.
Okay, Michael, thoughts, questions?
No, I'm ready
Okay.
to hear whatever information you come back with, and we can
Okay.
go from there.
Okay, so we're just still waiting for the, for the service and software annual licensing costs. Okay, the next item. Okay, the next item that I think has outstanding, and this is going to be similar with several of the school items. I do not have an update on this. I'm not sure on this particular one it matters. We weren't looking for incremental information from them on that. Which is the student athletic, the bus for students in athletics, the 15 passenger transport van. The next item is the Chromebook lease. I did discuss this with Ron Menard and confirmed that is simply the second year payment of a 3-year lease. And at the end of the 3 years, we will own those Chromebooks. And he does expect that they'll last between 5 and 6 years, just depending on when they end of life the software. So that is confirmed, and that should leave us ready to vote on that item. The scoreboard, I'm still back and forth with Susan Owen on exactly what it is that we're trying to do on the sound system. And I will hopefully get that clarified. But in the latest communication, it sounds like there's a sound system that would actually be mounted on the scoreboard, in addition to the sound system that currently is on the press box. I guess Susan, Francine, a question I would have for you is, do we currently have a sound system on the scoreboard, or is it just on the press box?
It's just at the press box. As far as I know, that's my understanding. It's just at the press box, which no longer exists.
Right. But that should be covered. Okay. And as you think, like, I don't even know where the scoreboard is over there relative to the people. Is your opinion that the sound would be improved if we had a $30,000 sound system on the scoreboard itself, or is that literally across the field and away from all the people?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I think that the press box, if it's to be rebuilt where it was, is on the home side, on the home bleachers, and the away bleachers are closer to the scoreboard. So it's possible there is better hearing for the folks that are coming from away. But I don't know the answer to that, but I could see that it's possible.
I guess having been to a lot of football games at a lot of different schools, most of them only have sound coming from the press box. And
On the press boxes.
what you don't want is sound coming from both places, because then it's just going to interfere. You're not going to hear well at all. So I think
Susan, I can't really
I
hear
can't
you.
hear you, Susan. Yeah.
I have my mic up all the way. Can't up any higher.
You just went clear there at the end.
Oh my God, it's up there. I was just saying, you can't hear me?
We
If
can
you
hear you,
turn
but
it
there's
down,
like
I
an
actually-
echo. It's scratching. Yeah.
It may be up so loud it's creating distortion is the only thing I can think of.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that you can't have competing sound, that's for certain. So if they want it on the scoreboard, then I don't think we need to get it in the press box.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's one or the other.
Well, the press box should be free, and I always prefer free. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I think Mike Barclay had his hand up.
Thank you, Michael Dick, for pointing that out. I didn't see it, but there he is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, the press box is at the 50-yard line, and it is behind the home bench. The visiting bench is directly across the field from that. So, I mean, if you think about the distance, that's a lot shorter than having it all the way down at the end of the field on the scoreboard. I would think if the sound system's on the press box, that would be the better place to do it.
And it faces the bleachers and across the field to the bleachers on the other side. So it should
Correct.
propagate
Right.
across the shortest path. Okay, I'll continue to push that. I feel like I'm chasing my tail on this.
Yeah, I would just add, Brian, that when we spoke to the school department, again, on the, and the capital budget came up, we suggested that they maybe reach out to sports organizations about the scoreboard and the lights to see if they could somehow drum up some support. I know that's something that happens in pretty much every town. So the sports folks usually are enthusiastic about some form of support that could maybe help to, reduce the cost to the town overall.
What was Michael? What was the the temperament of the response to that suggestion?
I mean, they seemed open to it.
Okay.
Mary was on the call, and her husband's been involved with the Cohasset Sports Partnership. And, again, I just know in other towns, sports organizations are usually enthusiastic about supporting stuff like that. And I mean, I've been to football games under the lights, last season. Lights seemed fine. I mean, I wouldn't want to have to hit an 80-mile-per-hour fastball, but that's not what's being done on that field. So, I mean, not saying that, the LED, the new LED shorter lights aren't nice and at some point might even be necessary. But I just given the how big their ask was relative to the capital budget, we suggested that maybe, they look for outside support and come back later.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. My guess is that, once the new track and field are in place, people will be excited about the facility, and that's, having executed on that and actually shown progress, there'd probably be a good time to build excitement around a fundraising effort like that. Particularly if the old scoreboard starts to stand out a little bit more as dated, right, in the context of a new track and field. So,
and the new press box that is covered by insurance, right? So
right. Okay.
Can we go back to row 23, the van replacement for Cohasset Elder Affairs? Did you talk about that?
I didn't. Did I skip that? I did skip that. I apologize. So you give us an update there.
So I spoke with Nancy at Cohasset Elder Affairs, and confirmed that the two vans that they have right now are passenger vans, and they are not outfitted at all for wheelchair or walker access, and they cannot be outfitted for that because they have too many seats in them anyway. And I talked to her about the grant, and you can't apply for the grant until April, which is after the appropriations are made. But they're feeling, their view is if they could do the appropriation contingent on getting the grant. So in other words, it could be withdrawn by the town, should the grant not be, that they're not able to get the grant. Harlan and Situate did get this grant in the last two cycles. And they're kind of following their leadership and on how to get it done, right down to the selection of the vehicle, which in my opinion, Brian, I know that you noted this, but they're looking at a Ford E350 Cutaway, which is more of a commercial van. And it's rear-wheel drive. But there is a transit van from Ford that's a E350 that seems to be a little more passenger oriented and maybe a better alternative. But I didn't really push that specifically with her. I was just trying to get details of how the mechanics work the grant. But there's no way to get the grant before the acquisition cycle.
Okay. So here's my question on the grant, and my question on the grant is, it's, even if we do a contingent upon the grant program covering 80% of the cost, does that mean we only need to appropriate the 20% that that the grant program will not cover? Or does it mean we have to appropriate the full 100% and then apply for the grant? Because I've seen it done both ways. But if we only, I mean, if really this is a request for 20% of 66 grand, which you call it, $13,200 request, right? And that 13.2 is contingent on them getting the grant. That's just logistically, different than us actually having to front the 66 grand. I guess you could still make a contingent and assume you're going to get the 54 back. It gets you the same place, but the logistics are a little bit different.
Well, I asked her that question. She wasn't all that clear. I don't think she understands the appropriation process that well. But the sense I got from her was that they just wouldn't pursue it. If they didn't get the grant, they actually would not even pursue the van. Even though the other van is in pretty rough shape, and I think by 2023, it probably won't be functioning very well at all. But she also did say that they are aware that the timing of actually getting the vehicle could be 12 to 18 months. So the spend, won't even happen for a year to a year and a half, even if we did appropriate the monies. And we would know by then whether there was a grant.
I didn't hear a whole lot of what Susan had to say, everyone.
I can say, just as far as the way the grant is written, it's a reimbursable grant, so we have to front the funding to get it back. Which, like you said, Brian, it's kind of just a shift of the money. You'll eventually end up with it. However, you do have to put it out first.
So is the grant available or is it not?
It's available to apply for April 1st. It's a competitive grant, so it's not a guarantee. But what Susan was saying is that Hull and Situate applied for it the last 2 rounds and they were awarded the grant. And Cohasset is following their lead right down to the specifications of the vehicle to try to gain that award this year.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And when does the grant application have to be in? In other words, when would an appropriation need to be made in order to just qualify for to be an applicant? Because I mean, we're not even going to have an appropriation until May, whatever it is, 4th or whenever town meeting is, even if we put it on.
I believe that Nancy said it opens up on April 29th. Is that what you know, Michelle?
Yes. And I think they're trying to get it through this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So we would receive the award within this fiscal year for the appropriation.
You're saying fiscal 2022?
2022.
Fiscal.
Is the way I understand it. I'll have to reread the grant
Okay.
verbiage tomorrow, but I believe the grant is going to be issued April 1st. April 29th is the deadline, and they're looking for a quick turnaround for funding for it's FY23, but calendar year 2022.
Okay, sorry, you just I'm confused on dates, okay? Because the 29th I heard is one of 2 things. I heard opening on the 29th, and I heard the other one, that's the filing deadline is the 29th.
I was under the impression it's the deadline. Susan, did she say it was the opening?
Yeah, she did say that, but maybe she just misspoke. I don't know. I can get online right now and look at it.
Okay. Well, I guess the question is, can they even apply on April 29th if we don't even have the appropriation until May 4th?
They can apply as long as when you're awarded the grant opportunity, you have the funding in place.
Okay, got it. So they can apply, fall with an appropriation, update the grant program, and you're good to go. Okay. Okay, so we have to appropriate the entire amount. I guess the the trick here is how do you actually make an appropriation that's contingent on a grant that, you know, the department agrees they will not spend the money unless they actually get the grant. I'm not sure we've ever done that before. I'm sure there's a way to do it. We may have to do sort of a, you know, some type of an agreement. I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, I've never seen that done before, but certainly there's a way to do it through you know, more than a verbal conversation. Thoughts, anybody? I mean, should we do just a notice of intent or a letter of intent, just a paragraph or two, and try and keep it incredibly simple? Or what are people's thoughts on that?
I do it as a contingent, I think. However that gets written, it should be contingent, I think. That's all. 66,000 contingent on getting a grant of 80%. So something like that.
I mean, our vote, it's easy to do that, but then, those contingencies generally don't find their way into the warrant or the town manager's motion. That's the issue, right? And then they have an appropriation without any contingency on it. So I'm just trying to figure out how to.
Why is that? Why wouldn't it end up in the warrant?
It would have to get written into the warrant specifically, somehow or another. And I've never seen it done before. It doesn't mean it can't be done. I don't know, Ralph, you've seen a lot of warrants. Any thoughts?
I can't remember that specific language in a warrant. There may have been one, but I don't remember one. So
not in all the years I've been on Capitol, but I've never seen it before.
I don't remember. So I think we could put it in that way and then ask for a written agreement between the Capital Budget Committee and the Elder Affairs or something. I mean, I guess you're gonna have to leave it at that. It'll end up being 66,000. And hopefully they'll honor their commitment to us. Okay, that's the way to look at it.
I'm also happy to reach out to legal counsel and see if there's anything that they've done for another community that has a contingency on it. So
I don't want to create a whole nother warrant article, right? I mean,
so just to clarify, the application is the 29th of April through June 24th.
Okay, so you can apply as late as June.
Yes.
Okay.
Fund this cycle anyway.
Sorry?
Then it wouldn't fund this cycle. If they're going to leave it open till June 24th, then they're no longer going to fund in FY23. It would have to be a funding of FY24.
Why? I'm confused. Why is that? If they made a decision in calendar, in June of 22,
Yeah.
of calendar 22, why could they not fund it in fiscal 23?
So June 24th, right? So
Yeah.
it depends when the award would be put through. And then you have to, so I'm confused about when it's awarded and when we pay for it. So if it's awarded and we're not paying for it till we receive it and it's 12 to 18 months out, I'm just confused. I'm concerned about the timing of the actual award and the payment. I don't know. I feel like I have to read that. I'm just really concerned about it because of the timing and the length of time it takes to get a vehicle. We just went through this with our ambulance. In our ambulance, we had to go on a different contract and apply for an extension. So I'm concerned only because it's already happened once.
Okay.
So would it make any sense to reach out to your counterpart in Situate or Hull?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay.
So Michelle, the grants for last year's award were made in December of this year.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed that, Susan. So you're saying the folks that applied in, call it, April through June of last year, the awards actually came through in December of last year?
Yeah, that's what it says here on this article online. $8.9 million was awarded under the program in December.
Okay. So call it 6 months later.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so Michelle, you're gonna reach out to council just to see, I just want,
I'm gonna reach out to council, and I'm also gonna take the suggestion to reach out to my counterpart in Situate and see how they handle this.
okay. All right, and assuming that logistically we can do this, right, which is make an appropriation that's contingent on an 80% grant from the state, do people have what they need to vote at this point, recognizing that we still need that one sort of technical issue resolved? Why don't I start with you, Michael?
I'm okay with voting on it, and I would be inclined to just grant the money, not contingent. And then reach out to Elder Affairs and say, please help us and apply for the grant. Or maybe it would be Michelle on behalf of the town procurement to say, please, we know there's a grant opportunity. It would really be a good thing. And I can't help but think that CEA would do that.
Yeah, I think they would. I guess the question I would have, is that they seem to be cognizant that this may take one or two tries. And I guess my question for you would be, would you want to put the pressure on them if they were willing to, try a second time if they at first did not succeed? Because I think right now that seems to be part of their thinking.
I'm not sure what you mean there, but
So if they don't get the grant this year, they seem to be willing to try again next year. Hence the contingency.
all right. So it really comes down to how badly do they need the vehicle, and if what we're being told is they really have no other option but to get a new vehicle.
Mhm.
And we're comfortable that they've made their case, then I think we should fund it without contingency.
Okay.
So Nancy is going to a training session on April 21st to learn about how to apply to the grant, which is run by the Mass DOT. So they're very committed to pursuing the grant.
Okay. And Susan, did you get a sense as to whether or not they would be willing to wait a year if they pursue the grant this year, don't get it, and think it might be worthwhile to try again as opposed to just spending the money?
I get the sense that the current van is in very bad shape, and they're very concerned that it's going to make it, with the time period it's going to take to even get this one being 12 to 18 months out. If they wait another year, who knows when
Okay.
they'll be able to get one.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Francine?
I'm ready to vote, and I would, I think we should put the contingency in there. I think we've got to have incentive for them.
Okay. Ralph, thoughts?
Yeah, I would vote for it with a contingency in there, right?
Okay. But just to be clear, you and Francine both think the contingency should be in there.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do as well. And it sounds like they're on the same page. They've got to go through the process, but I do think we ought to hold them to it.
Okay. So let me play devil's advocate for a second. So what, if we put the contingency in there and they don't get the grant, then they cannot buy the van, right? How do you, just the two of you in particular who want the contingency, and I understand why you want it. I mean, certainly it's better, right? But this is a realistic scenario. How would you feel about them not having money to buy a van if they apply for the grant and don't succeed?
Well, there are two things. When I'm looking at their submission to us, they said it's really a repair issue on the 2009 vehicle. So they can keep it going. I don't think they don't have all that many miles. They got 65,000 miles on it right now. And they put 3,000 miles on it per year. It seems to me you can probably squeeze another year out of this thing. And I know it's not desirable, but they can do that if they absolutely have to. But I prefer that they actually work very hard to get the grant. That's how I'd look at it. So we want to
Okay.
put some emphasis on that point. Just get your new van, but also get the grant. So.
Okay. And your feelings, if they don't get the grant, they should wait a year or try again.
Yeah, well, they're saying they can keep this thing going. It just costs too
Yep.
much, it says, right?
Okay.
And
Francine?
that's, yeah, I agree with that. And that's what I wanted to just clarify. I don't know if anyone knows that if they apply for the grant and are denied this year, does that prevent them from reapplying next year? Or I wouldn't think so, but okay.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm undecided as to whether or not I want the contingency or not. I certainly want the grant. I think we all want the grant. And I want them to pursue it aggressively. And I don't want to create any disincentive for doing that by just sort of providing the money with no strings attached. At the same time, I'm really, really wrestling with the idea of, wrestling with the scenario of they make a good faith effort to get the grant. They don't get it for whatever reason. Now they can't buy the van because we made this contingent. I'm not really sure where I come out on that. I guess I'm gonna have to process it. Okay. I guess that is a homework assignment for me and me alone to figure out. It sounds like everyone else is ready to vote. All right, Michael, thank you for catching that we had skipped over that item. I don't know if that's my astigmatism or my brain fog, but good catch.
So do we have just two left now to make sure if we've got any more information? The furniture and the hallway.
I know, Brian, you touched on the 15-passenger van, but I don't know if we ever came to any consensus on whether it's ready to vote.
I think we lost Brian. We lost Brian. Yeah, we lost him.
Okay. And you know what, Michelle, if you can promote me, I can share my screen, which has our rundown and everyone can see it. And did anybody hear any further from CPC?
I did. So they believe that the library roof is a capital item and should be funded through capital. We also had that ask Mike for 40 Parker Ave. And they're saying that should also be a capital request and it should not be funded by CPC.
40 Parker is an historical structure.
Oh, that's the big argument.
It is.
I'm aware it is. They don't believe it is.
Okay, so do we send a note to them saying, please research this before you dismiss it?
So according to one of the members, they called the state and it's not on the historical list. But I researched it myself and I believe I saw it on there. They're saying because it was altered significantly, it's no longer historical.
Huh.
So not the state, that's what the CPC board is saying. So
Oh,
I'm not entirely sure what's happening. I'm getting this
Okay.
all secondhand via text, so
okay.
I don't
okay.
want to misconstrue anything or put words in anyone's mouths.
What request is that? For what?
For 40 Parker Avenue.
This is brand new. I happened to notice
Yeah,
it on the CPC agenda. And I'm very close to CSCR. I'm not on their board, but I'm very close to Jack Buckley, and I called him today to find out, what are you guys doing? And the town did a needs assessment recently on all of the town properties, including 40 Parker Ave and Lightkeepers. And Michelle, you have to help me out with the other,
The Legion.
the Legion.
Yeah.
To see what needs to be done to keep these buildings maintained. And Jack Buckley, who is the president and director of CSCR, told me today that the consultant delivered like a 60+ page report on 40 Parker Ave in terms of what its needs are. So that request went over to CPC. It's last minute, but it went over. I imagine we're going to be getting something. And Michelle, you could tell us what the thinking is over in town hall on whether we would get it for, annual town meeting, or if it would be deferred to the fall.
So I think at this point, it would probably be deferred to the fall. I think they were hoping to have a little bit more success with CPC and just because of the needs assessment and how comprehensive it was and exactly what it outlined. But they're tabling it. I don't know if they're going to hear it again before annual town meeting. I don't think it's realistic at this point to put it in front of capital, only because it's $100,000 worth of an ask. And as we keep trimming, I don't know that it's fair, but that's not for me to decide. Brian's back in. It's not fair, but not for me to decide what should be brought before you. It's such a late date, but where you're trimming back to then add in another $100,000
Yeah.
right now at this point, just it seems disingenuous. But
Yeah.
it's has nothing to do with Jack. Has more to do with, I think the route was to go CPC for those items, and what it is, it's several items that make up the $99,000.
Right. Brian, are you in?
Yeah, I'm back in.
You froze.
Can't hear you, yeah.
Exactly what happened. It's just now on my cell phone.
So Michelle just told us that CPC has tabled the yeah, Michelle, roll through it one more time.
Sure. So CPC has tabled the library roof. They believe it's a capital item and should be funded through capital.
Okay.
And I think Brian's frozen again,
Yeah.
or he's very stoic. Brian?
You're pretty much frozen on our screen.
Maybe turn off the video.
Brian, do you want to try calling in?
I'll try again.
Oh.
Just go on the voice path.
Yep.
Just a quick thought about historic commission, especially the state historic commission. It's very hard to get on that list. And I doubt very much that, in fact, I know that the library is not on the list, and I'm sure that the Jack Buckley's building is not either. They would not typically get on the list unless someone went through a very detailed architectural examination of what it was and what it's become and all of that sort of stuff. Jackie's been through that with the Hingham Institution for Savings, which is clearly a historic building, and it's been very difficult to get it through the State Historic Commission, to be honest with you. So
Right.
a lot of background in that one. Very tough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, are you there?
Yeah, I'm back. So basically what I think I caught was that CPC either doesn't want to or doesn't believe they can cover the library roof. Which is it?
They believe it's a capital request item and should be funded through capital.
Okay. It sounds like I need to follow up with Russ directly and just understand the rationale. I mean, I don't disagree. But so are things like boat ramps and all kinds of other things that get funded through CPC. So I'm not really sure I understand the distinction.
Mhm.
Does anyone else on this call understand the distinction?
Nope.
No, there may be no fine, sharp line on this thing at all, I think, Brian, I'm afraid.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a case that a library is a recreational facility too, so they just don't want to do it, I guess. So, Brian, do you want to take the chair back? I've been sort of vamping here.
Oh, that's fine. I'm happy to pick up where we were. I don't know. Let me just look at this for a second. I mean, I guess I dropped it at the PA system and I was covering the student furniture. I'm not sure if you guys were able to cover anything since then.
Well, I asked the question, did we come to a decision on whether we're ready to vote on the 15-passenger van for student athletics? That's row 27. And Michelle, do you want to give me control and I'll share my screen?
Have it.
I thought we were waiting for more info on the van and we haven't gotten any more new information since last week. Is
I
that
haven't
right?
got any new information. I guess maybe I misunderstood. My job with regards to the school, which was to tell them where we had come out, as opposed to go request any additional information. But I mean, if we want more information, let's certainly use the next week to do it. Unless people feel like their minds are already set on this, I can certainly go back and press and get a better understanding of exactly what teams and do they actually travel JV and V separately, is where this van could actually apply. But I guess my question would be, had people already made their decisions on this, and was it just my job to tell the school where we were, or was it my job to actually go get incremental information?
The notes I have is that you were going to provide our views to the school administration.
Right. Which
So the question now is, are we ready to vote?
Well, let me poll people. Susan?
Yeah, I'm ready to vote, and I'm continue to not be in support of this idea.
Okay. So let me play devil's advocate for a moment, and don't interpret this as a bias. Is there anything the school could share with you that would change your view?
I mean, possibly, but possibly, I guess.
Okay. Francine?
I don't think I need anything more and I'm ready to vote.
Okay. Michael?
I don't need anything more and I am ready to vote.
Okay. Ralph?
Same for me, right?
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll communicate this as soon as possible. They've got a week to try and change people's views, I guess is what it comes down to. So why don't we mark this RTV and simply put it in their court to make a stronger case if they so desire.
Okay. I'd like to suggest that we go back up to library roof. And okay, what we have here is ready to vote. And then my note said CPC still to decide. So my question to the group would be, are we ready to vote on this knowing that CPC won't fund it?
One of the things, let me toss in something I'm agonizing over now, is we have $1.9 million worth of money to spend, and now another 200 and some odd thousand has come in, and I'm just wondering in the back of my head, what is the highest priority things we absolutely know we want to do, and how much have we got left over? I mean, I don't know how to deal with all these things individually now. So,
Right.
yeah.
It was my hope to touch on this at the end and sort of share a path from here to there, but I felt like I was running along that path. And now I look down and I'm missing a leg as a result of this $210,000 sort of rejection from CPC. So. But, you know, once we get through this list, Ralph, I would like to just walk through exactly where we are so people understand what, you know, how much we still need to cut in order to get to the finish line.
Yeah, yeah. It's just getting that whole picture because it's getting very
Yes.
hard to figure out what you would vote yes for and what you would vote no for. If you had the money, you'd vote yes, maybe for some things that now you can't vote for. So, I mean, I'm hung up on it now because I don't know where I really am. That's all.
Okay, so just to be clear on one item, Ralph, okay, the others have the benefit of this having been on the call last week. Prioritization is a separate matter from whether or not you have the information you need to vote an item.
Okay.
Okay, so when you know when we're polling the team, do you have, you know, are you ready to vote? People are ready to vote. There's this that just means you're simply ready, right? The work is done. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to get voted positive. Some of these things pretty clearly you can sense are going to get voted negative, and you know some of them may switch depending on, you know, how much money we have and whether or not we can cover them. So just, you know, ready to vote means ready to vote. It doesn't mean you've prioritized it. Okay. Sorry, Michael, where were we? I apologize.
Well, are we at a point where we have all the information we need for the library roof and we can vote on it? Well, that goes to Ralph's point about prioritizing, but we've been using Ready to Vote as having all the information we need.
Right. So the library roof is up top. Yeah, so I mean, I think we marked it RTV, but we were hoping to hear from CPC, and we've heard from CPC. So are people still ready to vote? Let me just, you know, recycle the question. Michael, you still ready to vote?
I am, yes.
Susan?
Yeah, I'm ready to vote.
Ralph?
Yes.
Francine?
Yes.
And I am ready to vote as well. Okay. So let's knock out these last few items at the bottom. The field lights, we had marked this. Hold on a second.
We missed furniture. I
We
think.
missed the furniture. So I sent an
Yeah.
no, I didn't send an update on the furniture. The update I have on the furniture is that they're looking at $200 per student desk and chair combo. And then there would also be teacher desks in for that grade as well. And so this is their estimate for roughly a grade. Could be as much as a grade and a half, depending on, you know, on the pricing that they get. But this is not the entirety of the school, just to be completely clear.
$200 and $60,000 for a grade. So there's 300 kids in a grade?
No, there's
No,
there's
they'll take-
150, sorry, like probably close to 130 in the biggest grades, 140 tops.
Then I don't know where we get this 60,000 or how much the 60,000 really covers. If you're saying it's $200 per student.
Yeah, you're right. The numbers don't add up. So again, I'm still going sort of in circles on some of these school items, but your point is spot on.
Yeah, so the question we asked last week, Ralph, was how many of these desks and chairs need to be replaced? Let's replace them, but we need a count.
Right. Understand.
And so if we still don't have the count, that's still to be determined, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So who can go to the schools and ask them? And that's what it was check with the school admin on purchase details and total cost for 3 grades. And that's still an open request.
Agreed.
Well, Brian, did you say this was for 1 grade, right?
This is their number for 1 grade, possibly 1.5. That's
Okay.
correct. So to Michael's point, the numbers still need to be reconciled.
Mhm.
part of it is teacher desks, but that's not gonna fill the gap. Okay,
Big gap.
so that's on me. The next item is the hallway. I
Hold
don't
on,
have
hold
an
on.
answer on this yet.
Did we did not state whether we are ready to vote on the scoreboard? And I'm assuming we are ready to vote on the Chromebook lease since it's we got the confirmation from Ron Menard. Brian?
That's a good point. I, for some reason, thought we did poll people on the scoreboard, but let's go ahead and do that.
Okay,
Michael, you ready to vote on the scoreboard?
I am ready.
Susan?
Well, the sound system is like a third of the price, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be ready to vote if I knew we were only gonna get one sound system in one place.
I guess maybe let me ask the question slightly differently. Does the sound system change your vote?
I just think it's unnecessary to have a sound system on the scoreboard. You're gonna have it in the press box.
Yeah, I agree. So let's just assuming for a second there is no sound system on the scoreboard. Are you? I don't mean to probe you for whether you yes or no, but I think well.
No, I'd be ready to vote if there wasn't a sound system.
Okay.
And if there was a sound system, would you be ready to vote?
No, because I think we're paying for something that we're already gonna have in the press box.
So that would mean that you or Brian or both of you should be going back to talk to them about that. If we're following our method of going back and talking with the proponents and asking them to change their request to reduce the numbers.
Okay, sorry, let me be direct. So yes, you're correct, Michael. Let me ask the question differently. Susan, if the sound system is excluded, is it your inclination to vote yes on this?
Yes, I would vote
Okay.
for it if there was not a sound system.
Okay, got it. Okay, now I understand. Sorry, Francine, did I already ask you, are you ready to vote on this?
No, I mean, I've got mixed feelings on this. I mean, Mike Barkley, if he's still on the phone, I mean, he mentioned, I think, a good point that I think the schools have been told they ought to go back and look at other avenues for this. And I think I think this should be on them to first, make sure they understand what they're asking us for and not just throwing stuff in there. And I'm not sure that they've done that yet with what will be covered through the press box and the insurance proceeds and what they really need and what other sources, to Mike Barkley's point, what other sources or avenues they might have.
If I may, I'm just looking at what they gave us for the capital items requested. And the PA for $75,000, that was, I mean, what I'm seeing is that was a middle high school paging zone.
Yeah, that's a different animal.
That's
Yeah,
different.
okay.
Yeah.
So so we've got the scoreboard for 95,000. So that
Right. Yeah.
includes the sound system?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was, I mean, yeah, that along with the field lights is what we pushed back on them to just suggest getting, creating some kind of private public partnership and getting the sports organizations to help.
Right. So Francine, the question is, look, maybe we'll have the benefit of an answer, but does your vote change depending on whether the sound system is in or out, or are you ready to vote on this now?
I do think my vote would change if I knew the sound system was in or it was out.
Was out. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like we need to resolve that, and give that at least a fighting chance for prioritization. Okay.
And
And
Brian,
I have
will you
what I
check
need
with,
on that. Sorry, I was just gonna say I have what I need on that, and I'm not sure my vote would change. Ralph?
Yeah, I have enough. Right.
Okay. And Michael, the second item was the Chromebook lease. I have what I need
Let me
on
go
that.
back to the scoreboard. Are we saying that Brian is going to go back and check on the sound system request?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Then the line we skipped, Chromebook lease, are we ready to vote?
We already talked about that, I thought. Committee was ready to vote.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Great. Okay, then the next item. The furniture, that's Brian's going to check.
Mhm.
So that then comes down to on the upgrade of the PA in the hallway, Ralph.
Yeah.
Last week we said we were ready to vote on this.
Okay.
But Brian, do you want to open it up for discussion since Ralph is here this week?
Only if Ralph has questions on it. I mean, we haven't
Okay.
reopened other items, but certainly.
Right,
we're all
sure,
open.
yeah. So the question is, Ralph, are you ready to vote?
Well, let me only say that my understanding of that is to separate out actually how that sound system works so that you can have different zones, but I am not sure I've got that right. If that's all it is, I am ready to vote. If it's much more than that, then I may be more convinced that this is a good thing to do. But anyway, am I right about this idea of being a set of zoning of the sound system? Is that essentially correct?
That's one of the two components. So I did speak with Ron about this when we discussed the other IT items. That is a main component. Right now, the middle school and the high school share a paging system, and they like to be able to page their schools respectively and independently. The second issue is that there are a whole bunch of speakers that were daisy chained, and they've always struggled to get decent levels of sound in all of the rooms and all of the hallways and the outside because they were daisy chained as opposed to home run independently. And so there's also a substantial amount of rewiring of certain speakers to eliminate that problem and make sure that everybody can hear at a comfortable level, neither too faint nor too deafening.
Okay, thanks.
I also pressed him, just for everyone's benefit, I pressed him with whether or not we were throwing good money after bad on a dinosaur PA system technologically. And he felt very strongly that actually the sound that the system itself was is a good and an appropriate system. He doesn't have any instinct to replace the whole system, and just felt that some of the installation was done in a slipshod manner, probably from day one. Okay. So that's it on the PA.
Yep. So the next one is the hallway. And
The
you were going
hallway.
to ask if there was a legal requirement to have the hallway there.
Yep. And I do not have an answer at this time.
Okay. And then finally, the automatic window shades, is there a safety imperative? Is there some kind of requirement? Is that what you meant by imperative?
I'm not sure. I didn't write that. But what I can tell you is that there was a request from the committee that we ensure that the school had coordinated with the police department. And what I can share is that that I forced that issue, and those conversations not only did happen, but they have been taking place over the past several years. And the summary conclusion is that the police department believes this is the best solution for that particular issue. We discussed several alternatives. They had considered them and ultimately arrived at this one. So I guess the net summary is that this is something that the police department is not dismissing.
Well, I guess I'm disappointed that, well, I haven't heard, what you're referring to specifically. But if there were no windows there, if those windows were blocked off, would the police feel differently? Was that question ever asked? If they were frosted over? Or
So there was a question about frosting, and they had considered that, and there was a view on that. There was not. I did not discuss with them, just filling in the walls with block.
no, or just frosting the windows. Did the police weigh in on that specific question?
I did ask that specific question, and they had a reason why this was preferable from their perspective.
And which was what?
Which was that, the frosting still allows you to see shadows and movement on the other side, generally speaking.
Okay.
So are there any other questions on this, or should we just quickly pull the committee? Sorry, I can't
Let's
see
poll.
raised
I
hands.
have no
I'm
other
not on-
questions. Yeah, I have no other questions. I'm
Okay.
ready to vote.
All right, so Francine's ready to vote. Susan? Michael?
I'm ready.
Ralph?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, and I'm ready. The one item that we had marked ready to vote on this, and maybe that's accurate, and it's moot at this point. But I think there was some confusion with regards to the request around the field lights, and I did on my to-do list from last week at least have a follow-up with Nick Berardi, which I think I've circulated to everybody. Hopefully people have had a chance to see that. If not, the net summary on that is that this is not about aesthetics. It's about actually eliminating the annual cost of replacing, the historical lights, which regularly burn out and require a lift and oftentimes an electrician team to go up on the lift to not only replace the bulbs, but sometimes replace the ballasts. Their experience is that it's running, between sort of typical years, $5,000 to $6,000 a year on bulb replacement, including the cost of the lift and the team to do it. And there's some years when it's substantially higher than that. Apparently this is one of those years, which is partially what's triggered the request. So I think they're looking at 10 grand this year. So, there is an argument that this project actually pays for itself in terms of a cash on cash return. It also takes one item off of the facilities team's list to the extent we can put LEDs up there that don't require replacement. At least not in any type of frequent interval. So I would provide that update. Hopefully people have seen the emails. I don't know if there are any further questions on that, or if anyone wants to, has anything else to go back to Nick, but it sounds like we were ready to vote. Does anyone have,
This is Francine. I'm ready to vote.
okay. Susan? Michael?
I'm ready.
Ralph?
I'm ready.
Okay, as am I. Okay, so I think that's it for the updates. The items that I've got marked for follow-up include the DPW HVAC, where Ralph is going to talk to Brian Joyce.
I'll talk with Carl along with Mike. Yeah, right.
Okay, to Carl. Okay. I've got follow-up with Brian Joyce with regards to the Samsung loader, just to make sure that, that transmission rebuild is an acceptable alternative to them. We need, on the police cars, we need to get the waterfall. On the mobile base station, and I will do that. On the base stations, we need to know exactly what it is. That seems that we've got some confusion, but it sounds like it is one radio base station, which includes speakers and an external antenna and the installation. But that's for confirmation.
Brian, can you go back to row 13, the annual road paving? Did we come
Yes.
to an agreement on ready to vote or not?
We did. Are there further questions or?
No, I just
Confusion?
want to make sure I have this updated then. We are ready to vote on that?
We polled and I marked it ready to vote. Yeah.
Good. Okay, I just missed that. Go ahead.
Okay. So the base station. So I've got two items with the chief. On elder affairs, it sounds like Michelle's going to check just to see if there's a way to do that contingent, but it sounds like some folks at least are willing to vote it without a contingency. And I'm not sure what I'd do there, so I have to figure that out. So that's Michelle. With regards to the scoreboard, this is one of my school items, just to clarify the sound system and encourage them to have one system, not two. We need to reconcile the numbers on the furniture request, given they don't add up, based on price and counts. And I need an answer with regards to the hallway at the middle school to access the bathroom. It's really a bathroom access.
Right. Brian, going
Okay.
back to the furniture, we were looking for purchase details and the total cost for 3 grades.
Okay.
That's what we had from last week, if you want to continue that.
Okay. All right, so that's what we have for follow-ups. Okay, let's talk about where we are, because I thought I had this figured out. We basically need to take $1 million out of these requests. It's just using round numbers. Okay. I was hoping that the library roof was going to be 210 of that. That's no longer the case. What I think we have earmarked right now for items that would not be funded, at least based on past conversations, were several school items, including the sidewalk and the asphalt road, the scoreboard and the sports van, which totaled 430,000. And this is just what I had in my notes. This may not be where people are, because I sense that there was a little bit more open-mindedness on some of these items today. So that was 430. The E-rate refund is 100,000, which would bring us up to 530. There will be some small savings on the IT services contracts if we move to 1 year and then ultimately send them to their appropriate home in the operating budget. I don't want to quantify those yet, but let's just not put a number on those. So we're at 530 after the E-rate. If we can do the Samsung loader as a transmission rebuild as opposed to replacement, that gets us up to 700,000. And because they're requesting 200 and the rebuild is 25, so you're looking at 175 on top of savings on top of the 530 that we found elsewhere. So that gets us up to 700.
Brian, can we just walk through that again? Because when you mentioned the 3 things on the school, I didn't get to the same number. You said the
Sure.
Sidewalk 210, the bus 45, and then excuse me, the scoreboard.
The scoreboard was 95, and the scoreboard was 95, and the asphalt road was 80. So that got me to 430.
Oh, that's what I missed. Sorry. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Keep going.
So it's the sidewalk
Yep.
and the road.
Yep.
And then the scoreboard and the sports van got me to 430. The E-rate
Yep.
was another 100.
Yep.
And then 175 on the Samsung, which gets us up to 700, which leaves us, which leaves us at 700 that we've cut out of here.
Yeah.
So there's another 300 that needs to come out, or be funded in some other way.
Mm-hmm.
Coming into this call, I thought, there was a good chance that 210 of that 300 was going to be covered and we were on the home stretch. I guess the CEA van, and if we get the grant on that, that's another 50. certainly that helps. There'll be something on the IT services contracts, and then it's a question of what other items can be cut.
And Chris Senior has turned us down in providing additional funds this year for capital stabilization.
Well, we haven't asked because in reality, the funding to the various buckets, is largely set at this point, or at least in terms of what is available.
What was the estimate? Did you have an estimate of what 2 years of service contract for the IT ask was? What was that we said we'd like them to consider taking out? I don't remember what the dollar amount was.
I think it was 30,000 when I pulled that up, I thought it was 30,000. I could be wrong. It was hard to figure out where he put it, but I think it was 30.
Okay. Well, so what's the best approach then? If we take, I mean, are we waiting till we get these open items cleared so that we know? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, 2 years of that, and I don't. Yeah, the WAN gear has 30,000, and then the Sorry, Francine, were you in the middle of a thought?
Well, no, I had moved. I was digressing into where do we go from here? Are we waiting first to clear out these open items that we have after this conversation here before we, or are we going to vote on what we can vote? I'm not sure what the plan is going forward.
I'll tell you my instinct.
Yeah.
My instinct is, given that the library just sort of blew up one of the foundation cornerstones of how we get to $1 million, my instinct is that we all need to process that and digest that, and then figure out how we independently would, pull the other 300 out.
Okay.
To get us to a full $1 million of cuts. The other levers that can be pulled, are that we can talk to Chris about possibly using Chapter 90 funds to fund, both spreader and plow. I mean, that's its primary purpose. You're still funding the road program this year, so you remain loyal to the funding commitment. We're just using that in a more flexible way than perhaps people had anticipated in the past. That's one option. Another option is to seek ARPA funding, or some portion of the ARPA funds that have flowed to the town to cover some of these items. That's another possibility. It's really about 250, assuming that we get, CEA van grant. But the other alternative is to go through here and 50 grand. It's probably going to mean cutting several items.
So Brian, is there any reason to think about delivery times on some of these items, and maybe finding them today really isn't that advantageous because they're not even going to be able to get them in this fiscal year?
I'm not sure I totally got that, but I think what you asked is whether or not there's logic to deferring some of these items based on the inability to execute and foreseeable inability to execute in the near term in the current environment. Is that the question?
Yes.
I mean, certainly that would be great if you pulled the items from the list. I'm not sensing that we're at that point with any of these items right now.
Brian, I missed the first part of what you said. You're breaking up.
Yeah. So the first part of what I said was a summary of what I thought I heard is this question.
Okay. And so in this spreadsheet, I've got a 500,000 that we are considering.
The way I
You're cutting in. I can't hear you at all now.
I'm not speaking. Michael, can you hear me?
I can right now. I couldn't hear you before.
Okay. So what's your question, Michael?
I see $510,000 that we have recently pulled out, but I don't see where you get to 750.
He was talking about getting the money back from the IT technology through the grant and the money back from the other affairs van from a grant. Yeah, I can't hear
anything he's saying.
Me either.
No, it's all broken up now.
So unfortunately, I'm on my phone, Michael, so I can't see what you've got.
Michael, the other thing that you're missing is the alumni field scoreboard he took out, the 95.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that gets you to the 430 from schools that Brian was getting to.
Thanks.
To be fair, at that 66,000, if we make it contingent, if we do, I think we're still on the hook for 20% of that.
Mhm.
Right.
So the full 66 doesn't come out.
So that's 13.
Yeah.
Two.
It's 80-20 split.
Mm-hmm.
The grant would be 80%.
Mm-hmm.
It's 52-8.
Items that you know you're going to vote for tonight, or to kind of hold off on everything? Because I'm just wondering what the expectation is for select board tomorrow night.
I'd be inclined to want to vote on those things that we're almost surely going to fund and find out where we are. They're going to want to know that, and then all the question marks can be at the bottom. Something like that, to get something concrete down here. There are many things that all of us will agree on should be funded. It's easy IT for the most part, with a small contingency in there. You're going to probably have to do, sorry, Mike, I think we're going to have to do the police cars, for example. We're going to have to do the roof of the Osgood School, the library, right? I can almost name them, and that may not be your opinions, but we can begin to name them at least and see where the heck are we on this thing. So just to get something down on concrete and on paper, I think we could agree that we will not fund another loader except at 25,000 bucks if we can get the transmission of the Samsung done. You know, I think you can come to a lot of agreements on an awful lot of stuff here, which would get us at least, you know, maybe you spent a 1.9 million, maybe you spent 2 million or something at that point, and then you can talk about what do we do about the rest. So I don't know. I'm trying to get something done.
Yeah.
So Ralph, are you saying we actually vote or we actually just?
I'd vote as much as you feel comfortable voting right now. I would do it. Yeah.
Well,
So
you're right.
this-
I mean, there are some things we know we're going to vote for. Like we're going to vote for the school bus lease. Obviously, you got to have
Mhm.
school buses.
That's
Yeah.
right.
The Chromebooks, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's part
I
of a
mean-
lease. You can't say no, right?
Yeah, of course. Right. We're going to vote for those. Right.
All right, so,
Is Brian back or is he? He's back, but I don't know if he can hear us or.
I'm back.
Okay.
I am back. I don't know if you can hear me. I can hear you guys just fine.
okay,
Now we can hear you. Right.
all right. It's 9:30 now. I really do need to drop off. What I can do is I can stay for a couple minutes if we want to plug into this column here, CBC, what we are all agreed will be funded.
Okay.
And leave blank anything that we're not sure of. Do you want to do that as an exercise? Not a final vote, but a straw poll?
Yes.
Okay,
I do. Right.
all right. So Brian, I'm looking at my screen.
Mike, I'm sorry. I just want to interject. I'm not, I feel as though tomorrow night the select board is expecting capital to come forward with at least some semblance of votes on something. So I think the last path that you guys were discussing as far as voting items that you know you're going to vote, like the Chromebooks, the school bus lease, I think it's a start. Because I think that's their expectation, unless Brian has had a conversation otherwise.
I think that's expected. That is probably their expectation, regardless of any private conversation I've had. Anyway, so
I'm not hearing you, Brian. I'm sorry.
Unless a member of Board of Selectmen, every member of the advisory. Well, I'm gonna need.
Brian, you're
Alrighty.
breaking up. Yeah, you're not clear.
Come back in one more time, and I'm not sure why my connection's in and out. Okay.
Well, it could be the Zoom meeting
And Mike
misbehaving.
Barclay has a question as well.
I was just gonna, it was more of a comment, having sat through this whole discussion, and especially since you just got a $210,000 expense lobbed your way in the last half an hour, that I mean, I'm one of the liaisons to the advisory committee, and you know, I certainly wouldn't, in light of everything I've heard and the massive amount of pruning that's been needed to be done from where you started. If you don't have it all buttoned up tomorrow, I certainly understand why that is, and have no problem telling the rest of the advisory committee that too. So that would be my take for the advisory committee. I don't know what the expectations are from the select board, though.
Right. Thank you.
I do have to tune off though, so I'm going
Yeah.
to part ways. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Right.
All right, well,
If we can't get Brian back, what do we do?
No, I'm back.
Oh.
Michelle was just promoting me to a panelist. So anyway, I did have a conversation with Chris, and he's aware that we're not going to have this completely resolved, but I don't think that changes necessarily the expectation of the select board or the advisory board. Once this meeting is posted, their expectation is that we're coming in, right?
What their expectation is what?
I think their expectation is that we're coming in with something.
Well, that may be a faulty expectation.
Yeah, that may be. The agenda is posted as an update. It is not posted as them voting our items. So, you know, they're not necessarily assuming that this is completely done, but they're certainly expecting an update. I do think if there's a timely way to bang off a large number of items that we're absolutely going to vote for, that's
I don't have the time tonight, Brian. I
Okay.
have family here from out of town.
okay. Then we should-
I've given it my best shot.
Yep.
I am willing to spend a few minutes right now to at least note those expenses that we all feel are no-brainers. And that can
Okay.
be your report. These
Okay.
items we are agreed
So
on.
let's
The
do that.
rest have open questions,
Yep.
and we're not ready to provide an update.
So let's do that, Michael.
Okay. So, overhead garage door replacement. Is that a no-brainer or is that still debatable?
No,
I-
that's,
I'm
Here's-
sorry.
here-
Go ahead.
Let me make a suggestion. If everyone can go off mute, Michael can read the list. And if you're planning to vote no on one of these items, say so. But silence means it's a no-brainer. Because otherwise, we're going to have to roll call every one of these. Michael doesn't have the time. I don't think anyone else does either. So if everyone can go off mute, that would be great. Michael, take it from the top.
Okay,
One question. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. We decided we're not voting tonight. We're just taking a poll, if you will.
yes,
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
we're providing an update. So,
So if you're ready to vote yes, stay silent. If you have a different view or you're undecided, please say so. Okay?
okay. Is the overhead of garage door replacement a no-brainer? Okay. Is the police locker replacement a no-brainer? Okay. Is the library roof a no-brainer? Okay. Is the police station roof a no-brainer?
not sure, reservation.
Good. Is the number 4 dump truck a no-brainer? Is the Samsung loader at $25,000 funding a no-brainer? Is the annual road paving contribution a no-brainer?
I have a reservation on that if it's something that can be something less than the 300,000.
In which case you would vote 300.
That's correct.
Okay. Open question, personal protective clothing, no brainer.
Okay, so you skip.
Okay, we have reservations. That's fine.
No. I understand. You skip the next two because you've got reservations on the police and the mobile base. So
Yeah.
Protective clothing.
I'd have reservations on that.
Okay. Mobile wireless cardiac monitor, no brainer. Security upgrades for 200,000.
I have a reservation just in terms of right sizing the services component, but the
Okay.
overall item, yes.
For both line items or only one?
Yes, but both line items.
School bus lease, no brainer. Chromebook lease, no brainer. Replace alumni field scoreboard.
Reservation.
Thank you.
Reservation.
Upgrade the hallway PA.
Reservation.
I have a reservation on that too.
Furniture, teacher, students.
I thought we needed more info on that.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Retile all classrooms and cafeteria, Deer Hill School.
Oh, God.
Just say reservations if you're not sure.
I think reservation. I'm not sure on all of
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Field lights.
I'd have reservations on that.
I do too. Locker mechanisms.
I have a reservation on that.
Okay. Create a new, oh no, that's still info to get. AC heater split for the middle school health clinic. Good. Automatic window shades, reservations here.
Reservation, right? Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move this. We have allocated 757,000 and change out of 1.9 million.
Doesn't seem right.
It's good. Good. Good start.
Okay, Brian,
Well, the time's 9:41. I think it's time to entertain a motion to adjourn unless there are any other items of business.
So,
Technically, Mike, we allocated that, but we'd already removed a bunch of items to the right.
say that again.
We had moved a bunch of items off of the list to the right. In the yellow boxes.
Yeah, and my understanding was that that was in Brian's list of items to be dropped to get us down to 1.9 million.
Okay.
So I moved them over to one side, which brings down the total amount of the requests to 2.4 million. If you take all these out, we go from 2.9 down to 2.4, or 3 million down to 2.4, or thereabouts.
Michael, there's just one typo. The 66 should drop down to 53 on line 23 because it's just the savings that you pulled out. You left the 13.2 in.
Right, okay. Well,
No, that's
Yeah.
not the right column that I think you're looking at. Those in the yellow are the ones that he pulled out.
Correct.
Right, but the
Oh.
bid was 66, so now it's 52.8 when you take
I'm
out
sorry.
the.
right, and actually this should be 200.
Well, no,
No, it should be 170.
no, it should be 175. It's just the net amount you actually reduced it by.
Okay, I'm not gonna argue.
175 and the 66 should be 52.8. Line
Okay.
23, 52.8. That's the amount we've reduced by. And, we are going to get 100,000 back on the security upgrades. That gets you your 757,800. Sorry, we're going to get 100 back on the E-rate for lines 21 and 22 combined. So that's how I got to my 750.
Right.
So it's going to be some combination of levers where they either going to have to reduce, pull more numbers, use Chapter 90 funds for some of this equipment, such as the dump truck, and or use ARPA funds, to cover a couple of items on here, but those are the levers available to us to make this fit.
Yep.
And that 210 step backwards is a real problem because we were darn near done
Mhm.
before we got that news, which is really disappointing. But
Okay.
I'll leave out that 100,000 for right now. All right, Michelle, let me email this to you, and if you can post this or distribute it to everybody. And it's, the file name is tonight's date, so you can tell it apart from last week's.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a blast. Thank you all.
All right, Michael.
okay,
Oh,
so we need a motion.
We need to
adjourn.
motion, yeah. sorry.
I move we adjourn.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
Great. All in favor? Michael Dick,
Aye.
Ralph Dormitzer,
Aye.
Susan Franklin,
Aye.
Francine Lyons,
Aye.
Brian Host, aye, and the time is 9:46. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too.